Welcome to All Things Moore County, Moore County's weekly radio show highlighting the many facets of the Sandhills. That includes real estate, lifestyle, community and neighborhoods. And now from 4 Properties, here's your host, Bill Sahadi.
Good morning and welcome to the talk show, All Things Moore County. Dorothy, we had a guest on just about 2 years ago.
At least, yeah.
Very impressive lady, Erin Skinner. She was the founder of a company that's operating here in Southern Pines. It was called Empowered Nutrition. Mm-hmm. It's a she's a functional medicine trained registered dietitian, and her offices are in Midland Hall, just outside the outskirts of downtown Southern Pines. She's a mom of 3. I have a ton of respect for her. She's very resilient. She's steely-eyed. She's compartmentalized. She is the antithesis of what you see on social media these days.
Social media is crazy.
We're just going to embarrass her, but with all the BS, the snake oil salesmen, the click and bait Hollywood pros who have created a business, a subculture of easy fixes, bad information. Erin, when you were on 2 years ago, you talked about some of the information, as you called it, the noise of social media about quick fix products and that go to the route of addressing causes and not symptoms. But they were really just, it's like sick care versus health care. How do you beat a drum and stand above the fray as civilized, intelligent, thoughtful, with the track record that you have? People have so much information. Getting through that, I think that in itself will cause people stress.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but what I would say is that what we actually see the chaos of social media around health information not as competition that harms us.
Right.
It harms the public, and we don't want the public to have that harm. But what we have happen every day in our clinic is that people reach out to us having already tried those things, having already been sucked into those things online and not having long-term success with it. So what's driving people to believe in that information and buy their products and whatever it is, if it's a supplement, if it's a book, if it's a program or whatever, is they're desperate. They just want
relief,
to feel good and be
right
healthy
away,
and have a good, happy life. So they're not getting it from their insurance-paid conventional healthcare setting. So then they don't know where else to go, so they go online out of desperation and try either some online thing or some expensive cash-pay clinic. It rarely plays out well for them, and so then they find us, and we're basically trying to be that source of sanity where you can still use your insurance, but you're going to work with qualified professionals that aren't going to give you a quick fix. They're going to support you and individualize a plan and walk through your journey of achieving health with you in a way that is realistic. It's not a quick fix, but it's also not overly complicated and impossible to achieve. We work with real people who have real problems and real lives and help them to actually get well. So it can't be something that is cost prohibitive or time prohibitive or effort prohibitive. So when people see that and they can use their insurance to get it, I wouldn't say it's a sell because it's healthcare, but like it's easy. It's an easy choice for them. Like in light of all the misinformation they see, they're burnt out on that. So they're attracted by something like what we have.
What are some of the things that you treat, that you counsel on, that you offer, nutritional plans?
Yeah.
For what kind of conditions are you specializing in?
If you think about what nutrition really is, it's like oil and gas in a car. If you never put oil or gas in your car, it's not going to run. Nutrients are like that for people. So aside from like acute injury any type of chronic disease has a nutrition component to it. So there's almost nothing that we don't do to some degree. We work with all ages, most problems, but the primary category of things that we do are metabolic challenges. So among that, you have things like insulin resistance, prediabetes, diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, obesity, metabolic syndrome, all of that world. And then the second main category of things we help with are inflammatory, autoimmune type challenges. So it could be there's all kinds of autoimmune diseases and inflammation related things.
Arthritic conditions. Uh-huh.
Huge nutrition element to that. And then another big category we work with is digestion. So people who have, again, there's just a lot to it, but 20% of the U.S. population, if they were worked up for irritable bowel syndrome, would be diagnosed. So there's just a lot of digestive issues that people have that are not well addressed in a conventional setting.
Coming from processed foods?
Well, a big part of what we do relates to how nutrition has a really tight connection with the microbiome and with gut health. And because of a number of factors, most people have problems with their gut health and their microbiome. And the way you resolve that is with nutrition and food. So it can partly be that they've been eating a standard American processed diet. There's also other things that can damage the microbiome. But yeah, the answer to that is food. There's no drug that fixes your microbiome. It's food. So, and then if you think about the way the microbiome is related to inflammation, it's related to autoimmunity, it's related to actual digestive symptoms, it impacts your hormone levels. So a lot of what we get is hormone imbalances across the lifespan. So it could be infertility, it could be low testosterone, perimenopause, menopause, PMS, PMDD, all these hormone things are greatly impacted by nutrition and the microbiome. And in fact, they won't work well if you don't have good nutrition. So, if you think of nutrition that way, it's like, look, everybody eats. Humans eat multiple times a day. That's the way we're wired. If you're not eating the right thing, you're not putting the right type of gas in your car, of course, like nothing's going to run well. So there's very few things that we don't play a role in, I would say.
Do people come to you after being prescribed certain medications to, one medication for one symptom and not having success? Do they come to you frustrated? Do they come to you as a last resort? And how do they get to you?
Yeah, so I guess the first question is sometimes it can be both. It can be that they've been recommended a medication and they'd rather not take it.
Right.
So they're looking for a more natural way to address their problem before going on a medication.
Right.
Or a lot of times they're given medications are not always very effective. A lot of times food can be more effective than a medication. Like I was just looking at a body of research, just looking at diet changes compared to antidepressant drugs, and diet changes actually were more potent in a certain population. So drugs are not always effective, as many people obviously have figured out. So a lot of times they were happy to take a medication, but it actually didn't take care of the problem, or maybe they've tried many different types of medication and none of them are working. A lot of times people start to get into this kind of vicious cycle where with polypharmacy, one medication causes side effects. The answer to those side effects is a new medication. The answer to those side effects is a new medication, and they start to get concerned about the way that their healthcare feels so reactionary instead of addressing the root issue. And so they can come from all those angles, and I would say the way they find us is also variable. So there's at this point, a lot of it is word of mouth, but we also are found on search, our website. Like people find our website just by searching. We are on social media, so sometimes people find us that way. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they find us, again, we really highly prize taking insurance. So a lot of times people are just finding us in their insurance database, like go in Blue Cross Blue Shield and find a dietitian and we're in there. Or we get a ton of referrals from providers. So that's maybe important to say is, look, most healthcare providers have good intent and they want to do well by their patient. They're
Right.
just not in a setting that allows them to.
Right.
So when they find out about us, they're excited. They send a lot of people our way.
So the rebranded name of what was once Empowered Nutrition is called Thrive. It's Nutrition-Centric Primary Care, which says to me it's more natural. It's not medication. And how does the medical community, how do you interact with them, and how do they interact with you? Because
Yeah.
don't they, like, wouldn't the hospital have their own nutritionists?
Right.
Are you in competition?
Good question.
Do they look at you that way, or do they look at you as? Because I have been referred out, for instance, for
Yeah.
physical therapy.
Yeah.
So they have physical therapists on hand, but they also, there's some independent, well thought of physical therapists in Moore County that
Yeah.
I've been sent out to.
Yeah. I can't speak to whether they see us as competition, but I don't know about that because the major health systems in Moore County, one of them has 0 dietitians, the other one has outpatient, like 1 or 2. This is and they see the majority of the people in the county for healthcare. So what that tells you, and those dietitians are kind of reserved for like very specific things. Like, oh, you've just been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Okay, go see the dietitian. So that doesn't really reflect the truth of what we already talked about, of how like most chronic conditions are connected to nutrition. And so they're not coming from that philosophy, and they're not highly utilizing nutrition in those settings. So when we have a patient, the thing that we have that's a challenge is that we don't have a good way to talk to the healthcare provider, the primary care provider that patient has.
Right.
And what we're doing is pretty impactful on the person's health. We're not just we're effective. So we are literally changing the person's health, and yet we can't see each other's notes. The primary care that they have, we can't see each other's notes. We don't talk to each other. We don't see each other's labs. There's really no way to collaborate.
You're talking about the blood work that you have to do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of like the blueprint, isn't it, to get started as to where you start to hyper-focus?
Yeah, exactly. It's important to look at labs. So it's really a danger to the patient when we don't have an easy way of seeing the labs that were drawn by their primary care. We run labs,
Right.
and their primary care isn't seeing what we run, and
Right.
then they're prescribing medications. We almost always recommend supplements to almost everybody because of
Instead of medications.
Yeah, as a part of the overall plan, yeah. So it's unsafe to me that their provider doesn't have a way of seeing what supplements we're recommending. We don't have a way of seeing what drugs the patient is getting prescribed. We're depending on the patient to tell us and what labs they have and show us their labs and see if they can get a copy of it. And it just doesn't serve the patient to have these two separate camps of healthcare providers that aren't in communication with each other. It probably kind of goes without saying. And so that's really the purpose of Thrive, is basically we've taken our successful group nutrition practice and just added primary care to it so that we can all be on the same team.
Okay, and explain to me, when you add primary care to it, does that mean you've hooked up with certain physicians?
No, it means we've created our own practice in-house and hired for us, so that it's like they're working in the same clinic with us in a room that we have.
Doctors.
So we have a doctor who's the medical director supervising a nurse practitioner to start.
Okay.
And then as soon as that nurse practitioner, we launched it this month, and the first day of clinic is actually tomorrow. So as soon as that nurse practitioner gets up to rolling, basically with patients coming in, the next step is to, instead of having the MD be the medical supervisor, we're going to hire one in-house to be in person, have two providers going at the same time.
The whole idea is to be as integrative as possible?
Yeah, in multiple ways. So I think that's an interesting word you use, because you could apply that to the communication that the dietitian and the primary care provider have with each other as integrated. But then it's also the healthcare philosophy of being integrative in terms of trying to look beyond quick fixes. It's funny how it seems like social media is so different than traditional healthcare, but they're actually not that different in the sense of like prescribing a drug is a downstream quick fix. Going online to buy some sketch supplement is also a downstream.
What kind of supplement did you say?
Like a sketchy supplement. You know what I'm talking about. Some
Yeah.
weird thing that you find online.
Yeah.
So in the end, they're both kind of downstream quick fix things, but integrative care is not really a complicated thing. It's simply just taking more time to try to go more upstream to try to find the real issue and address it over a more longitudinal relationship with more support, more comprehensively. So it's that, but the sort of the magic hat trick of this is that figuring out how to do it with insurance, because a lot of physicians are frustrated with the traditional healthcare setting, so they try to create a functional medicine clinic or an integrative healthcare clinic, but the problem they have is that insurance won't pay them for the length of visits that are required. And so then they have to take cash. So then they're expensive. Mm-hmm. And that's
right.
problematic for a lot of reasons.
Yes.
So what we do is we say, look, what's needed for these patients is within the scope of a dietitian. About 80 to 90% of it a dietitian can do within their scope.
Right.
The remaining 10 to 20% is out of the scope of a dietitian. So like prescribing drugs, doing a medical exam, certain medical procedures.
Sure.
So go ahead and take insurance to do the short visits for that remaining piece of it, and then have the two people on the same team. And then you don't have to charge a fortune for people to come in and just have a doctor do these long visits, especially because they don't generally know much about nutrition anyway. So it doesn't even work. We end up getting a lot of these people that have paid the $5,000 to $10,000.
You're saying that the doctors don't know a lot about the nutrition.
They don't, and it's not their fault. It's not a part of their training.
Right.
It's a totally different field. They know the things they've been trained in, and they're excellent at it. But when they try to go create an integrative functional clinic, they're not very good at it because it requires a knowledge of nutrition that they've never been trained in.
You mentioned, amongst other things, type 2 diabetes, and I've heard two doctors with two completely different opinions. One says you must cut your carbs, your sugars, things like potatoes, starches, pastas, and I've heard someone else say you really can eat whatever you want to eat if you have high sugars. It's not a diet-related issue. It's more of a pancreatic issue with a cell exchange. I'm like, really? I mean, somewhere in between there's got to be a right answer.
Yeah.
It gives me a headache. It's confusing.
Yeah.
But we live in this soundbite generation, or the soundbite, it is a soundbite generation. Everyone wants to hold on to something and be right.
Yeah.
And if they can be right, they're empowered. But if they're wrong, they get disillusioned.
Yeah.
And now where do you go? Now what do you do?
Yeah. Well, I think if you're going on social media for nutrition advice, what you have to understand is that
you need a psychotherapist.
Yeah. Well, their incentive is they get paid for views.
Uh-huh.
And you get views if you say something extreme. So the whole system incentivizes extreme and like controversial stances.
Yes. Very extreme. That's correct.
Because that gets more views, and then there's an algorithm that spirals people further into that kind of extreme thinking and like niche thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think there's nothing wrong with going on social media and looking around, but you need to understand that always understand the incentive of the person you're getting advice from. They don't get anything if they help you.
That's right.
If you feel better from their advice, they get nothing. They only get they're on there to get money, and there's a few ways they can get money from that. It's getting more views, which means they have to be extreme. It's selling you something. It's becoming famous and getting paid gigs. None of that has to do with you actually getting healthier. So find somebody that is incentivized to like actually help you, and that you'll be more successful.
All I can think about is Dr. Oz. He goes on TV.
Your hero?
He would sell, not really. He would sell anything for a nickel. I mean,
oh yeah,
it's it's embarrassing.
It
and
is.
he uses his intellect to BS his way through, and all of a sudden everything is a wonder drug, and everything is this, and or a supplement. I'm sorry, it's mind-boggling. Erin Skinner is our guest. Thrive is her rebranded business. It's Nutrition-Centric Primary Care. You're located right down the street on Broad Street in Southern Pines at Midland Hall. You always have a great point of view. We're going to come back in the second set and want to talk about your staff and want to talk a little bit more about specifically some of the things, some stories, success stories, and some of the issues that come up that you treat.
Okay.
This is All Things Moore County. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our second set. Our guest is Erin Skinner. She is a functional medicine trained registered dietitian. She has, I think you have 4 other dietitians you work with at Thrive, right on the outskirts of downtown Southern Pines. I like listening to you. You calm me. I think my metabolism increased listening because of all the misinformation that we get, and listening to you. You have a strong sense of credibility. But can you give us some examples of maybe 3 or 4 of the most common situations that you see that you treat through the nutritional counseling that you do?
Sure. When a lot of things that we see, so when we talked earlier about metabolic challenges, those all kind of come down to, so we have a protocol that we take people through for just basically what we would say is like the baseline correct diet for metabolic health. So if someone needs to lose weight, we take them through this. If someone needs to improve their blood sugar, we take them through this. So it's basically our kind of protocol for helping people to get going with ideal human diet. And of course we customize it. This is one-on-one clinical work, but basically in that protocol, what we do is the first phase is all about diet quality. So there's 4 pillars of diet quality for having a healthy metabolism. And so we kind of take people through that, and it basically goes through the amount and type of carbohydrate to eat, the amount and type of protein to eat, the amount and type of fats to eat, and then anti-inflammatory compounds from plants. So we get that all in order with people. And the reason for that is that the biggest myth that we wish people understood is that weight loss involves trying to eat less food. That never works, because weight problems are coming from an issue with metabolic health. And as long as metabolic health isn't good, there's going to be too much hunger, and there's going to be cravings, and there's going to be a higher appetite. So when you build in the right diet quality, it actually takes away the need to try to eat less, because you just naturally want to eat the right amount of food. So we kind of recalibrate people by just getting them on the right diet for metabolic health, and then a healthy metabolism has healthy appetite signaling, so that people don't have to fight their body all the time to try to lose weight. So that's the first phase of that. The second phase is eating timing. That's another big part of that. So are they eating in the right window? Should we do some intermittent fasting, some time-restricted feeding, incorporating those principles? And then the final window phase, if they need it. Some people don't need this, but the final phase is starting to cycle carbohydrates. So potentially even going as far as like temporarily doing a ketogenic diet to restore some insulin sensitivity, and then go back to a balanced diet. We don't ever want people to be on any type of extreme diet long term, but sometimes you'll use them therapeutically to regain health, and then go back to more of a sustaining maintenance diet from there.
What's a ketogenic diet?
Ketogenic diet is a very low carb diet. So
low
you're
carbs.
eating moderate protein, high amount of fat, very low carbohydrate, and it flips what's called the metabolic switch, meaning you no longer are fueled by blood glucose the way you typically would be. Instead, you're using stored fat to make ketones, and those ketones are like an alternative energy source for your body.
So what kind of foods would you not eat in a ketogenic diet? Breads, pastas?
Well, you can technically
Potatoes.
eat anything, but it's about, you're trying to eat a certain amount of net carbohydrate per day. So, of course, those foods you listed are very high. So those are going to chew through your whole budget very quickly. So you would minimize those foods for sure. And instead eat more of, yes, I think everybody that knows about the ketogenic diet thinks, oh yeah, you eat fat, you eat protein. But I think what a lot of people don't understand is you do still need to get enough plants and enough fiber for a number of reasons. So that's one of the main things we do is work on, first of all, making sure it's healthy in terms of including the fiber and the plants that it needs to include. And second of all, filling in nutrient gaps that people have when they're on it.
What kind of plants? I'm sorry.
So mostly,
I'm a layman.
Yeah, no, that's good. Like, I just don't want to bore you, but when we're thinking about low carbohydrate eating plants, you're talking mostly about non-starchy vegetables. So if you walk down the vegetable aisle, most of those you can eat on a ketogenic diet. So like broccoli, cauliflower, green beans, kale, spinach, arugula, green onions, garlic, all the zucchini. You get the idea. Almost everything that's not like a starchy vegetable you can have.
The Mediterranean diet
is different than the ketogenic diet for sure. But it is a good, healthy diet if it's done correctly. Unfortunately, a lot of times when you get some type of Mediterranean diet cookbook or something, it's not correct.
Yeah.
So,
but eggplant, chickpeas, greens, a lot of tabbouleh, cracked wheat with parsley.
On the Mediterranean diet?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all about, so like when we do that first phase I told you about with diet quality, it's a specific form of the Mediterranean diet that has it has certain targets for how much of each food group you eat in a given day. So you mentioned some whole grains and you mentioned some beans. Those are both allowed, but not in the amounts that most people would eat them in. Most people are doing way too little on the beans and way too much on the whole grain.
What about lean meats? Lean pieces of red meat or chicken?
Oh yeah,
fish.
We just officially try to not. It's a little bit, it might offend some people, but we do not think that we believe that animal protein should be consumed every day by humans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That would offend people?
I think there's just been a lot of, like you talked about, social media promotes certain thinking around food. There's been a trend that I think has faded out a little bit, but veganism really had a big moment there for a few years, and there's still a lot of people that, even if they're not vegan, they have this guilt that they're not vegan because the algorithm sucked them in and showed them a bunch of videos trying to convince them that they should be on a vegan diet, and that couldn't be further from the truth.
What other conditions do you... besides weight loss, metabolism?
Yeah, so we reverse metabolic conditions with that. We digestive, we talked about irritable bowel syndrome. There's some conditions related to that, like SIBO, for example, that we do a lot of work with. Have many clients in full remission of all their digestive issues through a combination of, the way we do that is through a combination of like a short-term diet that minimizes their symptoms while we use supplement protocols to actually address the root issue. Because a lot of times what's happened with situations where people have major digestive problems, they start to restrict their diet just to get through life, and then that causes new issues where they have nutrient deficiencies and malnourishment, and then that triggers some mental health issues and things. So we really work on their gut health so that they don't have to be on a restrictive diet long term. So we get them not only resolved with their digestive symptoms, but on a balanced diet that they can tolerate by addressing their issue.
Inflammation is a big word.
Yeah.
And it's like a tree with tons of branches, right?
Yeah, it is.
What kind of inflammation do you treat, and what do you try to do with people who have different, because is inflammation something that's, I don't know, it's more than just arthritis.
Yeah, there's a lot of sources. So I would say in brief, some of the main sources are, the simple source would be food. So just not eating the actual diet itself is pro-inflammatory.
Like what should you avoid, I guess, for inflammation? Is that the right question to ask?
Yeah, it is. I would say your body has the main way your body, so inflammation is happening all the time just to make energy for you to stay alive. You
Right.
have to, you create inflammation in your cells when you do that. So inflammation is a natural thing that's inside of the human body. So, but the way your body responds to that is you have a built-in mechanism that is an anti-inflammatory pathway, and that needs to be fed with nutrients. So what I would say is that not only are there pro-inflammatory things that people are eating, but they're not feeding that anti-inflammatory pathway enough. It needs a lot of nutrients and amino acids for it to run, and it's undernourished, and so you have a double-edged problem there where you're both promoting inflammation and you're not mounting a response to it sufficiently. So that's really what you do with an anti-inflammatory diet. But then there's downstream other causes of inflammation that relate to either autoimmune disease or imbalances with the gut microbiome.
She's waving me to wind down.
Yeah.
We're going to go quickly. We're going to come back in the set 3. I want to talk about diabetes and blood sugar control.
Okay.
That and arthritis for sure.
Yeah.
Erin Skinner is our guest. Thrive is her business. Not her business, it's her passion. Nutrition-Centric primary care in Southern Pines. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our third set. We're going to fly through. There's so much information to cover and not as much time as we'd like to have with Erin Skinner. Thrive is it's Optimize Your Wellness. It's a nutrition-centric primary care system based in Southern Pines. We were talking about some of the things that you see in your clinic. Diabetes, high blood sugar, arthritis are 3 other common situations that you deal with people.
Yeah, we do. So to talk a little bit about diabetes, one I think important thing to understand is that simply eating no carbs or changing carbs typically doesn't really cut it. And the main but although that is a part of what's needed. So the person you found online that said that you can eat as much carbs as you want if you have type 2 diabetes, that's not true.
Right.
But
I'm sure
it's also not true that simply eating, a quarter of your plate carbs every meal is going to take care of it either. The reason for that is that now what we know from the scientific literature is that the majority of type 2 diabetes is driven by something called metabolic endotoxemia. And what that basically means is that chronic low fiber intake, which is the majority of Americans, on average, they eat about half of their fiber needs in a day. That starves out the healthy bacteria in the gut. Gut bacteria need fiber as their fuel. When you have a low amount, then you have less healthy gut bacteria. That causes inflammation in the gut. Basically, it's almost like the healthy gut bacteria was meant to make these nutrients called short-chain fatty acids that nourish the gut lining. So the gut lining becomes unhealthy. You start to have too much of the proteins from your food cross through the gut lining, and that's triggering of the immune system. So it's almost like you're constantly accidentally vaccinating yourself against the world, and your immune system becomes inflamed and triggered by that, and that endotoxemia causes insulin resistance and diabetes and weight gain. It dysregulates appetite. And so if you simply just cut back on the amount of carbs that you eat, you'll still have this endotoxemia, this chronic inflammation that promotes a range of health issues, including type 2 diabetes, that would be unaddressed.
Okay.
So it's really about diet quality and restoring, in that example, the microbiome more than it's about just cutting back on the carbs that you eat.
Gotcha.
And arthritis actually is an inflammatory condition. So a lot of times when we do have someone where we do work on endotoxemia and metabolic health, they'll have just a spontaneous improvement or even full remission of their arthritis at the same time.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Osteoarthritis?
Yes.
Not rheumatoid?
Yes. Now, there are other things we do with osteo. So it's really important for people to get more glycine. Most people are not getting enough glycine, which is critical for collagen production. So we'll ensure that they get
Men and women.
Men and women, yeah, it
Okay.
doesn't matter. So it's either bone broth or collagen peptides every day for the glycine, and then we'll use things like glucosamine and chondroitin, and often a high quality turmeric. Turmeric is most turmeric is very poorly absorbed on the market. I'll just say that. So we have a lot of people that think they've tried turmeric, it hasn't
Right.
done anything, so they've written it off. But with us, turmeric is
It's all about
effective.
absorption.
Yeah, we know what's the good stuff. So we use the good stuff, and we put that all together, and yeah, we have good success.
So if people are feeling bloated or uncomfortable or overweight or underweight or tired or depressed, if they think they have metabolic issues, calling you would be a good idea.
Yeah, we'd love to work with people. We take most commercial insurance payers, so Blue Cross Blue Shield, TRICARE, TRICARE East, and TRICARE for Life, Aetna, Cigna, United Healthcare, MedCost, First Carolina Care. That's for all ages for nutrition. And then now for primary care, we are only doing adults for now, and children are rolling out later this year. And they unfortunately don't yet take Medicare or Medicaid, but for nutrition only, we also take Medicare and Medicaid.
Okay, so fees are covered by insurance for examinations, but not for supplements that you would prescribe, right? That would be
Right.
something they would have to purchase.
Yeah, so 95% of our appointments, the patient pays zero out of pocket for the appointment
Okay.
for nutrition, and then the primary care is also insurance billed. And then what's really important about our method to understand is we don't push anything on anybody. So if somebody wants to just do food, we just do food. If we do recommend like a supplement, it's the patient's decision, of course. So we'll lend our expertise of what would likely help you achieve your goals.
Right.
But there's never any. It's not a part of our like profit model of our practice, if you want to say it that way. We make our money off of the insurance claims, so we don't really care if you buy it or not, but we're willing to help you with what's a good idea to get.
Okay. Do you need? Does your client need a doctor's note to come to you for insurance?
So for a lot of the insurance companies, they don't. They can just directly refer themselves, and they don't need anything.
Oh, good.
For some insurance companies, they still don't need a note, but they do. We have like a little one-pager that a provider just basically checks off what they have and signs it.
Yeah.
For some plans, we do need that, and we do that all the time. It's not a big deal.
Have you? You've got a staff of 5 nutritionists on
Yeah.
staff. Okay, including yourself.
Yep.
And you have a very serene, peaceful
Oh,
office.
thank you.
No, it's really very nice. I stopped in there on my way over here just to reacquaint myself, and it actually looks great. Does the medical community in Moore County, do they know who you are? Are you hoping to spread your wings a little bit and get the word out and make connections with some of the different physicians in town?
Yeah, we already have good relationships with a lot of them. We get a lot of referrals from them and
Good.
refer to a lot of them. So there's an OB-GYN clinic that we work really closely with. There's 2 GI docs that we work well with. We have an endocrinologist that we work a lot with. There's also like a holistic dentist that we work closely with, and there's a practice of speech therapy and occupational therapy that we collaborate with for a lot of autistic patients, especially, or children with feeding challenges. So we never are. It's not our opinion that we are the beginning and the end of healthcare for everybody. We know that we're not, and so
You're a bridge.
yeah, we think it's really important to I mean, that's the role of primary care now that we've added primary care especially, and one of the reasons why we added is that the primary care provider is meant to kind of be the quarterback of the healthcare team in terms of deciding what referrals are needed and putting them in through insurance, and they can do that in a way that's more effective than a dietitian can. So, yeah, that's always been our kind of mode, is to collaborate with other practitioners in the community and continue to do that.
You're always a pleasure to talk to. Yeah, you're inspiring actually. Your website.
Yeah. So our new website is thrive-clinics, plural.com.
Right.
We're also on Instagram at the same thing, thrive-clinics. And yeah, we'd love to.
I saw
connect
a
with you.
video that you did. Was it yesterday? It was on Instagram.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I don't know how current it was. It might have been a few days old. I'm not sure, but very good. But you're up against all these Hollywood-type slick ad companies.
They're helping me out.
Click and bait, and hook you up and promise the world and do it in 24 hours and feel better. Wake up one day and you're all better.
Look, Moore County is not that big,
Right.
and we have grown 3x every year since we opened.
Wow.
We are not hurting, and it's because of people like that.
Yeah.
They're burning people out. They're frustrating people. They're harming people. It doesn't take a lot of failed attempts on social media to get help, to make people realize they need to look elsewhere. So
Okay.
it's okay. I just wish they wouldn't. I wish they wouldn't harm people. But in terms of, they're not a barrier to us. They're part of what drives us. They're part of the reason of why we think it's important to do what we do.
Okay. I am going to make an appointment with you
Okay,
for next week.
let's do it.
We're going to get off the air, and I'm going to thank you for coming on, and we're going to make an appointment before you let me leave here.
Okay,
Is that a deal?
it's a deal.
Dorothy, and I will tell you the after story. I promise. You know I will, right?
I know you will.
I know.
No pressure.
Erin Skinner, thanks for joining us. No pressure at all. This is All Things Moore County. Everyone have a great week.